The arrival of the human, the training grounds of the alien girls were alive with energy. Bright silver towers rose around the open field, and the skies glowed with two suns shining over the planet. The alien girls stood in groups, their elegant armor shining under the light, their long hair flowing with pride. They were strong, tall, and graceful warriors, each trained from childhood to fight, hunt, and conquer. In their eyes, nothing in the galaxy could match their power. That was why laughter filled the air when the human arrived. He walked slowly into the circle, his boots sinking into the red dust of the alien world. He carried no advanced armor, no glowing weapons, no cyber implants. He wore only simple clothes, the kind that looked weak and fragile compared to the shining armor of the aliens. The girls laughed louder, their sharp voices echoing across the field. One of them shouted, "Is this a joke? This small creature is the challenger." Another answered, "He looks softer than a child. He will not last even a moment." But the human did not react. He stood silently in the center, his eyes calm, his face unreadable. His body looked ordinary. Not built like a soldier, not shaped like a warrior. Yet his presence carried a quiet strength, something the alien girls could not explain. Still, they laughed, because laughter was easier than fear. The alien commander stepped forward, taller than the rest, her silver blade hanging from her side. Her eyes glowed with confidence as she looked at the human. "You are brave to come here, little one," she said, her voice sharp like steel. "But you are also foolish. You do not belong among us, and you will be broken before the day ends." Her words caused another wave of laughter from the crowd. The human finally spoke, his voice calm and steady. "I did not come here to impress you," he said. "I came here to prove something." The words were simple, but they carried weight. The laughter slowed for a moment, then returned, sharper and louder, to the alien girls. The idea of a human proving anything was impossible. The first test was brought forward. A block of stone, twice the size of the human, was placed in the middle of the field. The challenge was simple: move it from one side to the other. The alien girls grinned, knowing the human's small body would fail before even touching it. Several of them had already moved the block before, lifting it with their strong arms and sharp claws. Now they waited to see the weak creature humiliate himself. The human walked to the stone, placed his hands on its rough surface, and pushed. At first, nothing happened. The stone remained unmoved. The aliens laughed again, shouting insults and jokes. But the human did not stop. His muscles tightened, his breath steady. He shifted his position, using not only his arms but his whole body. Slowly, the stone began to move, inch by inch, dragging across the dust. The laughter faded into silence. The alien girls looked at each other with disbelief. The human was not stronger than them, yet he found a way. He used balance, patience, and clever angles, turning weakness into progress. By the time the stone reached the other side, the human was sweating, his arms shaking, but he was standing tall while the crowd stood speechless. Then, after a moment, the laughter returned, forced, nervous, not as strong as before. The commander narrowed her eyes. She could see the uneasiness in her warriors, the way their confidence trembled. "This means nothing," she declared, her voice cutting through the silence. "It was only a trick, a delay of the inevitable. Soon he will fail, and you will all see the truth." Her words gave the crowd strength, and the laughter rose again, though this time it was thin. The next test was announced, a sparring match. One alien girl, tall and powerful, stepped forward with a smile of arrogance. She carried a training staff and twirled it easily in her hands. The human carried no weapon, only his bare hands. The aliens laughed once more, believing this was the end, but the human simply raised his fists, his eyes locked on his opponent. He did not laugh, he did not smile, he only waited. And in that waiting, a silence grew. For the first time, the alien girls wondered if perhaps they were wrong. Perhaps the human was not as simple as he looked. Perhaps there was something hidden behind those calm eyes, something they had not seen before. The laughter grew quieter. The air heavier. The humans stood ready. The alien girl prepared to strike. The training grounds held their breath. The test had only begun. The challenge, the sparring field, fell into silence. The alien girl stepped forward with her staff in hand. Her movements fast and graceful. She was taller, stronger, and trained since childhood to fight. The human, by comparison, looked small and unprepared, standing with only his fists raised. The alien girls watching began to whisper, their laughter softer now, like they were trying to convince themselves the human would finally fall. The commander gave the signal, and the duel began. The alien girl charged, swinging her staff with powerful strikes meant to end the match in a single blow. The human moved quickly, dodging with surprising speed, his body bending and twisting just enough to avoid the strikes. The staff cracked against the ground where he had stood only seconds before, sending dust into the air. Gasps echoed from the crowd, mixed with nervous laughter. The alien girl grew angry, striking faster, her movements blurring with speed. But every time the human shifted just slightly, avoiding each attack. He was not stronger, he was not faster in raw power, but he was patient. He watched her, studied her, learned her rhythm. Then, at the right moment, he stepped inside her guard and touched her shoulder with his hand. It was not a heavy strike, but it counted. The human had landed the first point. The training field erupted in chaos. Some of the alien girls shouted in disbelief. Others laughed nervously, trying to hide their shock. The girl who had fought stepped back with wide eyes, unable to believe what had happened. The human bowed slightly, calm and respectful, his face unreadable. For the first time, the laughter of the aliens did not sound so certain. The commander frowned, her golden eyes narrowing. "This is nothing," she said sharply. "He is only lucky. Let the next test begin." Her voice forced confidence back into her warriors, though uneasiness still lingered in their eyes. The next challenge was one of endurance. The alien girls were given heavy packs filled with stones, designed to test stamina and willpower. The task was to carry the packs across the training ground, under the burning twin suns, until only one remained standing. The human picked up his pack without hesitation. Though it was nearly as heavy as his body, the alien smirked. Certain this would finally break him, the race began, and the girls marched with steady strength, their bodies built for hardship. The human followed behind, his steps slow but steady. At first, the girls mocked him again, laughing at his struggling pace, but as time passed, something strange began to happen. One by one, the alien girls began to slow down. Their strong legs shook, their breaths grew heavy, the weight pressing harder on their backs. They were trained warriors, but the heat and the endless march began to break them. Yet the human did not stop, his pace never changed, his eyes fixed forward, step after step. He did not race. He did not try to outmatch them with speed. He simply refused to fall. Hours passed, and the laughter disappeared completely. The aliens collapsed one after another, their pride shattered, their strength gone. In the end, only the human remained standing, sweat pouring from his body, but his eyes calm. He dropped the pack to the ground with a heavy thud, his chest rising and falling with controlled breath. The silence that followed was heavier than any laughter could be. The commander's face hardened, her pride burning with anger. She had seen humans before, weak and simple, easy to dismiss, but this one was different. And that difference unsettled her. "This proves nothing," she declared once more, though her voice was sharper, less certain. "The final challenge will break him, and when it does, you will all remember what true power is." The alien girls nodded, but their eyes betrayed them. They no longer looked at the human as a joke. They looked at him with caution, with unease, with the beginning of respect. Some even looked with fear. The human stood silently in the center of the field, his body tired but unbroken. He looked at the aliens around him and then at the commander. He said nothing, but his silence was louder than their laughter. In that silence, The aliens realized the truth. They had not defeated him. And perhaps they never would. The crowd shifted uneasily, waiting for the commander to announce the next trial. The air was heavy with suspense, the humans' calm presence pressed on their pride like a weight they could not shake. The laughter that had once filled the training ground was gone. Only silence and nervous whispers remained. The challenge was far from over, and deep inside, the aliens began to understand they were no longer laughing at the human. They were watching him, and they were afraid of what he might do next. The first shock, the training grounds were no longer filled with laughter. The alien girls stood in silence, their sharp eyes fixed on the human. He had passed 2 trials they believed impossible, yet he still stood calm and steady. Their pride was cracked, but the commander refused to let it break. She stepped forward and raised her voice so all could hear. "This time, there will be no tricks, no slow games, only combat," she declared. Her golden eyes glowed as she called forward one of her finest warriors, a tall alien girl named Saraya, famous among them for her speed and flawless combat skills. She was quick as lightning, strong as iron, and her arrogance was matched only by her skill. If anyone could crush the human, it was her. Saraya smirked as she walked to the center, her armor shining under the twin suns. She held 2 short blades that gleamed with deadly light. She spun them with ease, the sound sharp as air cut around her. Her sisters cheered her name, but their voices carried a shadow of desperation. They needed her victory to erase the human's growing legend. The human walked forward slowly, his boots pressing into the dust. He carried no weapon, no armor, nothing but his fists and his steady eyes. Some of the aliens shook their heads in disbelief. It was madness to face Saraya unarmed. Yet the human showed no fear. The commander gave the signal, and Saraya struck first. She moved like a flash, her blade slicing through the air with blinding speed. The human barely dodged, leaning back just enough as the blade passed inches from his chest. Gasps filled the crowd. Before anyone could recover, Saraya spun and attacked again, faster, harder, each strike aiming to end the fight quickly. But the human was not there. He sidestepped, rolled, shifted his weight, every movement precise and controlled. The alien girl shouted in disbelief. No human should move like this. Saraya's attacks grew sharper, angrier, her confidence burning into rage. She lunged forward with a final strike meant to pierce his heart. The human did something none of them expected. He stepped into her attack instead of away. At the last moment, his hand shot out, gripping her wrist, twisting her blade aside. In the same motion, he struck her chest with his other hand, sending her stumbling back across the dust. The entire field froze. Saraya, their fastest, their strongest duelist, had been thrown back by a human. She gasped for air, her eyes wide, her pride wounded deeper than her body. The laughter that once filled the grounds was dead, replaced with silence so heavy it felt like a storm waiting to break. The human stood tall, his breathing steady, his eyes locked on Saraya. He had not killed her, he had not even truly harmed her. But in that single move, he had shown control, power, and skill that none of them expected. Saraya tried to rise again, her pride demanding another attempt, but her hands shook and her knees bent under the weight of her failure. The commander's face hardened. Her warriors looked to her for strength, but even she felt a tremor in her chest. This was no accident, no luck. The human had defeated Saraya with precision, and worse, he had done it without cruelty, showing strength without arrogance that made him even more dangerous. Whispers spread through the crowd. "Did you see how he moved?" One girl whispered. "He is not stronger, but he is smarter," said another. For the first time, their laughter was gone, not hidden, not nervous, but truly gone. The commander raised her hand for silence. "This is not over," she said firmly, though her voice carried cracks of anger. "He may have won a match, but the trials continue, and he will not survive the final one." Her words sounded powerful, but her eyes betrayed doubt. The human's calmness was breaking her certainty. The human looked around the field, his eyes meeting theirs one by one. He did not smile, he did not mock, he simply stood tall, and that silence spoke louder than any words. It told them he was not there to play games, he was there to prove them wrong. The alien girls shifted uneasily. Their pride was wounded, their confidence shaken. They had laughed at him when he arrived, but now none dared to laugh. What they felt instead was something new, something uncomfortable. They felt fear. The commander clenched her fists, her pride burning. She would not allow her warriors to fall into doubt. She would make sure the final challenge destroyed him. But deep inside, even she could not escape the thought creeping into her mind. What if the human could not be broken? The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the training grounds. The alien girls stood silent, their laughter lost, their arrogance cracked. The first shock had come, and it had changed everything. The human had proved them wrong once, and in their hearts, they knew he would do it again. The rising suspense. The twin suns began to sink lower, painting the training grounds in shades of red and gold. The alien girls stood restless, their pride wounded, their confidence shaken. The human had survived every test. He had done what none of them believed possible. Now, instead of laughter, there was silence, a silence filled with doubt. The commander's voice cut through the heavy air. "Enough games, the next trial will show his weakness," she said, though her words sounded less certain than before. She ordered her warriors to bring out the puzzle stones, ancient blocks carved with glowing runes. The challenge was not about strength or speed, it was about intelligence. The aliens smiled again, their pride returning for a moment. They believed no human mind could unlock the secrets of the stones. The puzzle was placed before the human, a massive structure of shifting pieces glowing with alien light. It required logic, memory, and deep understanding of alien patterns. The girls whispered among themselves, confident this would finally expose the limits of his kind. The human knelt before the stones, his hands brushing lightly over the glowing surface. He studied the patterns, his eyes calm, his breath steady. He did not rush, he did not panic. Instead, he watched carefully, like a hunter watching prey. Minutes turned into long moments, the air thick with tension. Then slowly, piece by piece, he began to move the stones. The blocks shifted with heavy sounds, runes glowing brighter with every correct turn. The aliens leaned closer, their whispers fading into silence. One girl muttered, "Impossible. How does he know the sequence?" Another answered, "He should not understand our language of logic." But the human did. He studied not as an alien, but as a human, finding patterns they had missed. He saw angles they had overlooked. He solved problems they thought unsolvable. And soon, with one final movement, the puzzle stones locked into place. The runes lit up like fire, casting a golden glow across his calm face. Gasps filled the training ground. Some of the alien girls stepped back in disbelief. The commander clenched her fists, her jaw tight. She had expected him to fail, yet he had conquered a challenge designed to defeat outsiders, and worse, he had done it without hesitation. The human stood slowly, dust on his hands, calm as ever. He did not celebrate. He did not boast. He simply stood tall, letting the silence speak for him. The aliens, who once mocked him as weak and stupid, now looked at him with unease. Their laughter was gone, replaced with something else, something sharp, something heavy, fear. The commander barked at her warriors, desperate to control the moment. "This is only tricks and games, nothing more," she shouted. But her voice carried cracks of doubt, and her warriors heard it. They exchanged nervous glances, unsure if their leader spoke truth, or if she spoke only to protect her pride. The human turned his gaze toward the commander, his eyes steady, unflinching. He said nothing, yet his silence weighed heavier than her words. The alien girls shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet his calm stare. They had laughed at him, mocked him, called him weak. Now, standing before them, he felt larger than all of them combined. The commander, furious, ordered the next trial, a survival test in the Shadowlands beyond. The towers, the alien girls cheered weakly, though their voices were hollow. They wanted to believe in their commander, but their eyes betrayed doubt. The Shadowlands were deadly, filled with storms of glass wind and beasts that hunted in silence. The trial was simple: survive until sunrise. The aliens had trained in those lands since they were children. They believed no human could last a single night. The human listened to the rules, then nodded once, his face unreadable. He stepped toward the Shadowlands without hesitation. The alien girls watched him go, their hearts uneasy. None of them laughed now. Some whispered prayers to their ancestors, not for his survival but for their own pride. The suns dipped below the horizon, and the alien night began. The Shadowlands waited, silent and cruel. The human disappeared into the darkness, leaving the alien girls staring after him. For the first time they were not certain who would emerge. When the night ended, the suspense weighed on them like a storm. The laughter was gone. The arrogance shattered. All that remained was fear, and the haunting question none of them dared to ask aloud. What if the human truly could not be broken? The breaking point, the night ended, and the first rays of the twin suns rose across the alien world. The alien girls gathered nervously at the edge of the Shadowlands. Waiting for the human to return, they whispered to each other, their voices sharp with fear. No human could have survived the beasts, one said. He must be gone by now, another added. Though her words carried no confidence, then, through the mist, a figure appeared. The human stepped out from the shadows, his clothes torn, his skin marked with scratches, but his eyes steady, his steps firm. In his hand he carried a broken fang. Of a beast, proof of his survival. The alien girls froze, their pride collapsing further with every step he took toward them. He had not only survived, he had conquered the Shadowlands. The commander's face darkened, her jaw clenched tight. She had hoped the night would end the human's challenge, but instead had made him stronger. Her warriors no longer laughed, they no longer smirked. They watched him with wide eyes, some with respect, others with fear. The commander knew she had no choice. If she did not act now, her warrior's loyalty would crumble. She stepped forward, her silver blade gleaming in the morning light. Enough. Trials, she declared, her voice sharp as thunder. This ends with me, here and now. The alien girls gasped, some cheering, others whispering. The commander herself would fight, the strongest of them all. Their leader, their pride. The human looked at her calmly, his body tired but unbroken. He did not speak, he only nodded once. The silence pressed on the field like a heavy storm. Everyone knew this was the breaking point, the final test. If the human fell, their pride would be restored. If the human stood victorious, everything they believed about themselves would be shattered. The duel began. The commander charged forward, with speed far beyond the others. Her blade flashing like lightning, her strikes were fierce, powerful, and precise, each one strong enough to cut through steel. The human dodged, shifted, and blocked with his bare arms, each movement calm and measured. The ground shook beneath their feet as they clashed. The alien girls shouted in awe, their voices trembling. The commander roared with fury, her pride fueling her strength. You are nothing but a fragile creature, she shouted as her blade swung down, but the human caught her strike with his hands, twisting aside, using her own momentum against her. Dust exploded into the air. As she stumbled back, shocked, the alien girls gasped. Unable to believe their commander had been pushed off balance, the human pressed forward, not with rage but with precision. He moved like water, flowing around her strikes, never wasting energy. Every step, every motion was planned. The commander struck harder, faster, desperate to prove her superiority. But with each strike, she grew more frustrated. And with each strike, the human grew calmer. The fight became more than strength. It became a battle of wills. The alien girls watched in silence, their hearts pounding. They had never seen their commander struggle. Yet now she was sweating. her movements heavy, her pride breaking. The human, though wounded and tired, stood steady, his calmness unshaken. At last the human saw his chance. The commander lunged with her full force, her blade aimed at his chest. The human sidestepped, twisted her arm, and swept her legs with a single motion. The commander crashed into the dust, her blade flying from her hand. The training ground erupted in gasps, some cries, some screams. Their leader, the strongest among them, had fallen. The human stood over her, breathing hard but steady. He did not strike the final blow. He simply looked at her with calm eyes, then stepped back, giving her the chance to rise. That silence, that restraint, cut deeper than any weapon could. The alien girls stood frozen, their world turned upside down. The commander slowly rose to her knees, her pride shattered, her strength humbled. She looked at the human with burning eyes, but the fire was no longer arrogance. It was respect, forced upon her by undeniable truth. The human had done what no one believed possible. He had broken their pride. The training ground was silent. The alien girls no longer laughed, no longer mocked. They stared at the human, not as a weak creature, but as something greater, something beyond their strength and beyond their understanding. The commander lowered her head, her voice low but clear. "This is not weakness," she said slowly. "This is human strength." And in that moment, every alien girl understood. The breaking point had come. And it was not the human who broke, it was them. Asterisk. The human's triumph. The training grounds were still, the air heavy with disbelief. The alien commander, once proud and unshakable, had fallen in the dust, her silver blade lying far from her hand. The human stood above her, breathing hard, his body marked with sweat and scratches, but his eyes calm and steady. He had won. Yet he did not raise his fist in victory. He did not boast. He did not mock. Instead, he stepped back, giving the commander space to rise. This act confused the alien girls more than the fight itself. Among their kind, victory was always claimed with power, with dominance, with cruelty if needed. But the human showed mercy, a kind of strength that did not humiliate but honored. The girls whispered among themselves, voices soft and shaken. "Why does he not finish her?" one asked. "Why does he step away?" Another whispered. None had an answer. The commander rose slowly, her pride broken, her breathing heavy. She looked at the human with burning eyes. But this time the fire was not anger. It was something she had never given to another before: respect. She raised her voice for all to hear, though it trembled with the weight of her defeat. "This human is not weak," she said. "This human has shown us what strength truly means." The alien girls stared in silence, their sharp eyes fixed on the human. He was smaller, softer, weaker in body than any of them. Yet he had endured every trial, solved every puzzle, survived every storm, and in the end, he had defeated their leader not with cruelty, but with patience, with heart. They could not understand it, yet they could not deny it. The commander stepped closer, her head bowed slightly. "You fight with more than strength," she said to him. "You fight with spirit, with something we cannot measure." The human gave no reply. He simply stood steady, his silence more powerful than words. The alien girls, who had once laughed at him, now lowered their gazes, unable to meet his eyes. The training grounds that once rang with laughter were now filled with quiet awe. One young alien girl stepped forward hesitantly. She looked at the human with wide eyes, her voice soft. "Why did you not strike her down when you had the chance?" she asked. The human finally spoke, his voice calm, steady, yet filled with weight. "Strength is not about destroying others," he said. "Strength is about knowing when to stop." The words echoed through the field like thunder. The alien girls had never heard such an idea. To them, strength was victory, dominance, control. But the human strength was different. It was mercy, patience, and the will to endure. And in that difference, they saw something greater than themselves. The commander turned to her warriors, her voice firm despite her shame. "You laughed at him when he arrived," she said. But now you see the truth. He is not weak, and he has shown us that strength is more than power, it is spirit." Her warriors bowed their heads, the truth too heavy to ignore. Their arrogance had been broken, their pride humbled. The humans stood silently as the alien girls began to kneel one by one, not in defeat, but in respect. They did not laugh at him anymore. They did not see him as small. They saw him as something rare, something greater. The human had triumphed not only in battle, but in their hearts. The suns rose higher, their light bathing the training grounds in gold. The human's shadow stretched long across the dust, falling over the kneeling aliens. He did not claim them. He did not demand their loyalty. But in that moment, they gave it freely, for they knew they had witnessed something they would never forget. The commander lowered her head fully, her voice quiet but firm. "We thought you were fragile. We thought you were weak, but we were wrong. You have proved us all wrong." The alien girls whispered the same words, their voices trembling with respect. "He proved us wrong." The human looked at them, his face calm, his eyes steady. He gave no speech. He raised no hand in pride. He simply turned and walked across the field, his steps leaving a trail in the dust, and behind him, silence followed. Not the silence of doubt or fear, but the silence of respect. For the first time in their proud history, the alien girls had bowed to another, not because of power, not because of fear, but because of a truth they could not deny. The human had triumphed, and in that triumph, he had changed them forever. The lesson learned, the training grounds were quiet, the dust still carrying the echoes of what had happened. The alien girls, once proud and mocking, now stood with their heads lowered. The human had left his mark on them, not with scars or wounds, but with something deeper. He had changed their hearts, and they could not return to who they were before. The commander stood in silence, her silver blade resting at her side. She looked at her warriors, their eyes no longer filled with arrogance, but with reflection. These were the same girls who had laughed when the human first arrived. They had mocked his body, his weakness, his lack of armor and weapons. Yet he had endured every trial, outlasted every challenge, and in the end, defeated their leader. And he had done it without cruelty, without hatred, without pride. The commander raised her voice so all could hear. "We believed strength was only power," she said, her tone heavy with honesty. "But this human showed us that strength is also mercy, patience, and spirit." Her words spread across the field, sinking into the hearts of her warriors. They nodded slowly, understanding now what they had refused to see. The youngest among them, a girl with bright silver eyes, stepped forward. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "When we laughed, he stayed silent," she said. "When we mocked, he did not fight back. When we struck him, he did not strike with cruelty." Her words broke the silence, and the others listened. "He did not come here to humiliate us. He came to prove something greater." The human stood at the edge of the training grounds, watching them quietly. He heard their voices but did not interrupt. He had never needed to shout, never needed to demand respect. His silence had been his greatest weapon, and it had defeated their arrogance more than any strike ever could. The commander walked to him, her steps heavy but filled with dignity. She stopped before him and lowered her head. "You have given us a lesson we will never forget," she said. "You proved that strength is not in muscles or weapons, but in the will to stand when others fall." The human gave a simple nod, his eyes calm, his expression steady. He had no need for more words. The alien girls one by one bowed their heads, not as defeated enemies, but as students who had learned something they could not have learned on their own. They felt humbled, but also inspired. They had seen something greater than their pride, and it had come from the one they had mocked the most. The human turned away, walking toward the horizon where the twin suns cast golden light across the sky. His shadow stretched long behind him, falling across the alien girls who watched in silence. He carried no trophy, no weapon, no crown. He left only the memory of his endurance, his patience, and his mercy. And that was heavier than any blade. The commander spoke once more, her voice firm but filled with respect. "Remember this day," she told her warriors, "for it is the day we learned that laughter can be broken by truth, and arrogance can be shattered by spirit." Her words echoed across the grounds, a vow that they would never forget. The youngest warrior whispered softly as she watched the human disappear into the distance. "He was only one," she said, "just one human." Her voice carried wonder, almost disbelief. "But one was enough to prove us all wrong." The others nodded, their sharp eyes softened. They would tell this story for generations, not as a tale of defeat, but as a lesson of humility. The day they laughed at a human, and the day he showed them why they should never laugh again. The suns climbed higher, the training grounds glowing in their light. The human was gone, but his presence remained. Not in body, but in memory, in lesson, in spirit. The alien girls stood taller, not with arrogance, but with new understanding, for they had witnessed a truth that would never leave them. Strength was not about power, or weapons, or pride. Strength was about heart, about will, about the courage to stand when the world laughed. And that was the lesson they had learned, the lesson of one human who proved them all wrong.